8 weeks ago, when I woke up empty. When I woke up, I was missing, though it took me a moment to figure it out. I was covered in firm, unfamiliar sheets, and I opened my eyes to an unfamiliar room. The edge of my bed was a metal cage. "Hi, honey, welcome back." The woman was also unfamiliar, but she spoke as though we knew each other and I was her honey. I wasn't. "My name is Pearl," I corrected her. "That's right, honey, that's good." I focused my eyes and saw she was dressed like a nurse. She had on those shoes they wear, like for gardening, but clean, so you could tell they were for tending people, not plants. She walked over on her quiet rubber soles and I waited to feel it. It was the space I noticed first. People always took up so much space. Even in an empty room, I could feel the remains left by everyone who was there before. Everywhere they'd been was tingling and stained. I watched a program once that showed how quickly nature would take over our cities if humanity disappeared. Greenery and molds finding homes in the cracks of everything, climbing up the walls, making the stones groan and creak under the weight of their flowering. That's how places always felt to me, but with little pieces of thoughts and feelings blooming there instead. It made even vacant places seem heavy. The ward I found myself in now looked fairly shabby, but it felt light and pristine, which was disturbing. And it wasn't an empty place. Anonymous others were awake and feeling on the other side of the plasticky curtains. Even straining for it, I couldn't draw any emotion from them. It was like they were all dead, but that seemed unlikely. My nurse came closer. Here's what normally happens at that point. My body becomes a receiver, an amplifier of the other person. All the tinges of the room's past inhabitants pale into background noise, and if I'm not careful, the pulse of a person's insides can overwhelm me. They spill out like water from a bust dam, or they prick at my temples like hot little needles. They poke with blunt edges at a swirl they've woken up in my solar plexus, or they stretch out and grab with greedy, invisible fingers. I was never sure if my presence tempted this flow out of them, an instinctive reaction to the opportunity to be heard, or if it was always happening. Perhaps everyone's feelings pushed against everyone else's, most of the time in a deaf and dumb vacuum, but every now and again finding someone who was aware, someone like me. I never knew the mechanics of it, just that it always happened, everywhere I went. Except this time it hadn't. The nurse was stood right next to my bed, close enough for me to stretch out a hand and touch her without disturbing the tube on my drip. But I didn't need to touch her. I already knew she wasn't the one who was missing. I was. "Where am I?" "You're in the hospital, love. Do you remember what happened?" She'd misunderstood the question. I could see I was in a hospital, and yes, I remembered everything. I watched her write on papers clipped into a battered blue ring binder. I supposed it was my chart, and I wondered why it wasn't on a clipboard like on TV. The binder seemed sad somehow. It reminded me when I was a kid, how September sometimes came around before Sadie had the money for back-to-school sales at WH Smith. Those years I'd have to start the school year using old things, and it always seemed like a bad omen. I liked the years when there was enough for new folders and a new pencil case, even if Sadie didn't need them. The nurse was large, and her scrubs were the kind that had flowers on, pink and blue and yellow. They were too cheery, as though I was in a children's ward. I was a grown-up, and this was a regular ward. She should have made more of an effort to be dour. It wasn't her fault, of course. I wasn't used to seeing the surfaces of things, so I found the shell of her too loud and too flat. She seemed to be completely solid. The places where her skin met the air, her movements, those were the edges of her. Nothing reached out any further, she just finished. There was nothing underneath her skin that I could see or feel, but it wasn't like she was empty. She was completely filled in, the opposite of me. Surface, all the way down to the bottom. I tried again. "Where did I go?" "You didn't go anywhere, you've just been asleep for a while." "I can't feel anything," I said. She frowned and looked at the binder again, and then looked at me as though No, I didn't know what that look meant. She leaned in closer. Still nothing. What do you mean, love? Can you describe the feeling? No, I said, it's not a feeling, it's nothing. Where is it? Can you feel your legs? She lay a hand on my thigh. Do you feel that? I nodded and she frowned again. She touched my arm. And that? I nodded again, yes, which was only half true. I couldn't feel the presence of it, only the weight. Her breath was half a sigh and I knew my answers were wrong, but I was heavy and hollow all at once and I didn't know how to explain it. It's not my body, I can still feel that. It's the feelings. She blinked. Still nothing. The bad feelings, I said, though she'd have no idea what I was talking about. Only Sadie and Drew ever understood about the bad feelings. I went on anyway. They're gone. Well, that sounds like a good thing, she said, which made sense. Before then, I'd always thought it would be. I closed my eyes, and a memory of water reached into me. I felt it creep down from my stomach into my legs, and I let it, like I had yesterday, soaking in like relief. I thought it was the cure, or that it was me coming back. But before it got down to my feet, it pulled away again, tidal, left my body cold. I shivered and the sensation was gone, blank again, and eyes still closed. I couldn't tell if I'd been lying in that feeling for a long while or just a moment. I'm empty, I said, to my flowery nurse, if she was still there, or to the impossibly empty room, and pressed my hands into my soft belly, squashing it in demonstration. Where did I go?